We'll have to check. It says we're live. We'll have to check. I guess if somebody can tell us YouTube is live, and then I need to get an invite out here to people. I guess I just go to the channel as long as it's on YouTube.
I mean, I can look at YouTube. I mean, once it's live.
I'm trying to get to right now, and see if I see our faces. Here we are. So yeah, we're live. We're good. We can just tell people to go to YouTube now. I'm not even going to be all excited about it. Hey, it's opening day. Go crazy. We'll just start talking, man. If people want to add in questions and whatever, let's go.
Right.
I mean, we got 4 viewers already, man. Chat box is yours. It's like this was kind of impromptu and kind of whatever. And you and I are clearly doing stuff kind of in the background too. So right. It's not like going to be a pre-scripted show where we know exactly what we're doing, when we're doing it, and how we're doing it. We're
right.
just flying by the seat of our pants, as if really and truly, if people are here, well, I'll introduce us, I guess. If people are here publicly, Razzle's the MLB coach and the guru inside DFSArmy.com. I'm just, I don't know, a liaison between coaches and admin and management and whatever else, kind of a promotional hype machine that just ain't in the mood right now. But other than that, this is like what our VIPs get when we do the voice channels and we do the, member only shows. It's just nuts and bolts, man, just diving in. So I'll let Razzle, you take over and tell people kind of what you're doing as you're doing it, since it's your screen you're showing, and I'll let you do your thing.
All right. Well, right now I'm finishing up my personal runs for DraftKings, but I'm going team by team in how I'm running it, just because I had the time today to obviously go through and do it. But I'm getting all my percentages the way that I want them. As you see, I'm 100% Philadelphia on this run as my main stack. I have every other team a minimum here of 4%, which for some of my lower stacks was just going to guarantee that each of them got paired once. Should be good. Really, I'm just, here to answer questions more than just show exactly what I'm doing. But let's see, is there a way to play a player with B player, but if A is missing, add C? I don't know that you can do the but part. You can do the grouping part here with player groupings. So you can stack between one and however many you're doing, and you can list the players. You can do it in all lineups, or you can do it in the number of lineups that you want. Because off the top of my head, I'm not sure that I can figure out how to do the but part of that. That sounds like something you just have to make an adjustment for. Yes. If A is missing, do you mean if A is not in the lineup or he's not paired? If he's not paired, you can do the player grouping that way too, right? Like you can do stack between 2 and 2 and the 3 players, right? In all lineups or however many lineups you want. Or you can do stack two of 2 with player A and player B in however many lineups, and then you can do another one, add a rule, stack between 2 and 2 of player B and player C for however many lineups you want to do. So, like, if you know exactly what you want to do with it, you can do it. You just want to make sure that you have it figured out enough. Most likely you're not going to do it in all lineups. You're probably going to want to do it in a set number of lineups. Um, Chuck, yeah, I ended the NFL season on a ridiculous downswing after it's like 12 or 13 consecutive profitable weeks, and then I just hit a wall. So it's good for baseball to be back. Yeah, I mean, the Royals should be one of the higher owned stacks because it is the warmest weather. There's slight wind blowing out. And then obviously Tanner Bybee getting scratched, and now you have Lively throwing. Kansas City should probably slide up to the number one stack, really. I'm keeping them kind of in the middle on mine. But, I mean, with that, I should get plenty of them the way that I do things, plus, running nearly 400 lineups.
One of the things to mention is if you're to gain leverage in tournaments, you're going to want to either go overboard or underboard. You can still use Kansas City as, oh, well, they're a popular stack today. That's fine. If they're 25% owned and they are the top stack on the slate and you really like them, you're still going to want to go overboard on them. If you don't like them, sure, fade them, cut them in half, go 10%, whatever. But if you really, really like them, go 30, go 40. Take leverage. Whatever you do, take leverage, one direction or the other. Old school concept.
Like everybody initially thinks like, oh, I'm just going to get a leverage and I'm going to fade or whatever. I look at it with baseball, like I get my leverage at times going overweight, so like Paul Skeen's going to be the highest owned pitcher. I have a minimum at 45%. I can tell you that almost every one of these runs, obviously he hits 45 this time, but most of these runs he was more in the 50s in what I was doing.
So that's a little bit of leverage. It's not like crazy leverage.
Well, no, like it's just there's so many aces. Like I don't think there's a need to go, especially because on opening day pitchers are a little more limited. Like we're basically going to guess that most of these pitchers throw 5 or 6 innings.
Yeah,
there isn't a huge separator between them. If this was middle of the season and the spot for Paul Skeens was as good as it is, then I might go 60%. I might, jump the field by 50%. I mean, half of the ownership, but
here's the way I was always taught to look at it. And I can ask you, I don't know if we've had this conversation before. What are the odds you would place on Skeens, the chalk pitcher, to be the nut pitcher on the slate? Like what percentage of chance do you think that he is actually the nut pitcher on the slate?
I mean, I would say it's probably in the 45 to 50% range.
So it's about right on. But the reason I asked that question is, let's say you said, well, my God, that's like going to be like 60%. Well, then if the field is only on him at, 25, 30%, then the field is underweight on him, which means you should be overweight on him.
Right.
That's a question that's a little bit more intermediate or advanced question for our members or whoever in the public is watching. Ask yourself, and you can't ask yourself that about the 7, 8, 9 hole hitters on a team you're not stacking, but in NBA, NFL, any of the sports that you play, if you think of it in terms like that, you will make better decisions on whether or not you should play a player or not, fade him, go overweight. Like I see a guy who's 30%, and I think there's really only like a 10% chance this guy's going to nut the slate. I'm fading his ass. And if I see a guy that's 60% and I think that his chances are 80% that he's in the nut lineup, I'm going overweight on him even at 60%, and I'm eating all the chalk and then some. It just kind of quantifies where your decision should go in terms of stacks or players or this or that. And it'll help you make better decisions. That's kind of why I bring it up.
Yeah. I mean, it's in a way that's kind of how I look at it. Just it's always in my head. Like at this point, I'm so used to it. I don't literally just ask myself that. Mm-hmm. Like it's just kind of built into how I rate guys, on the cheat sheet, my confidence rating. my suggested percentage, if my pitcher pool is a little bigger because I felt like I had to play more guys, there would end up being somebody that I end up going underweight on, and I'll explain why. Like, I mean, in this scenario, if my pool is bigger, maybe I go underweight on Cole Reagans, but I put over here why. Like, the volatility is there, but maybe 5% of the time he's the nut pitcher, so that's why I'm keeping him in, but going underweight. James, in the DS, let's see. Let me get back to hitters. So I generally just go by position, and I sort by fantasy points per dollar, and I just start knocking down guys that have huge numbers because I just don't want the optimizer to shove in. We'll go to second base, like Otto Lopez, Kevin Biggio, who barely made the team, has to start today because of some injuries. Christian Campbell making his major league debut had a terrible spring, ton of hype, but I don't need him to be at a 3.0 or 3.1 point per dollar, because optimizers are built to find these values first to then help jam in everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's naturally then in baseball going to be somewhat stars and scrubs. And that's not necessarily what I want, because these scrub guys, their point per dollar makes sense. Look, I mean, he's min-priced. Rogers is a bad example because he's been a professional for multiple years. But if I didn't knock him down, and I obviously knocked him down a lot, he's going to pop on everything, because even at a 6 projection, all that is at 6 is, I guess, 2 singles. But like a single and a run scored is 5 points already. So that's 2.5x. So the optimizer thinks that's a good score for your lineups. But we're not trying to get guys that are just putting up 5.5 to 7.
Right.
We want guys that we legit think can score double digits, because our stacks need those guys to all average double digits. I'd argue we need them to average 14 to 16 on a lot of slates for our main stack. And 14 is a solo home run. 16 is a 2-run homer. 16 is what is it? A double, a run scored, an RBI, and a stolen base, I think. I have to familiarize myself with scoring again. But
welcome to the world.
You're trying to find things. A single, 2 stolen bases, and a run scored, I think, is 16 or 15. Yeah, 15. So it's those things, right? And a lot of these guys down here, Otto Lopez against Paul Skeens, why do I want him to have an original projection of over 7 in a terrible matchup? That tells me then, if you'd be sitting here at the top, that tells me that he's going to be in a lot of lineups that aren't Paul Skeens builds. And I don't really want that. I want second base to have some of the guys I think have the upside with, my builds that don't have Skeens. And then obviously some of these guys I just don't think are all that good overall. So I'm just going to drop them down. But really my goal is to get these numbers more, I guess, closely aligned. Second base is a little rougher. Here at shortstop, you can see dropping guys down to now where there's a bunch of guys between 2 and 2.5x. That tightens it, so now the optimizer isn't forcing these guys in every time. It's going to draw these guys.
Basically, it's optimizer manipulation.
Right. It's something that you get used to over time as you do it more and more. And understanding players, learning what their splits are so you have them in your head already, right? You already know it's a a terrible like left on left matchup. I don't even know if I have any examples in here, but
it's just so funny how over the years you have gone the way a lot of more elite DFS players have gone, which is really diving into the manipulations and whatnot of the optimizers, setting them up for combo runs, setting them exactly how you want the optimizer to tailor and craft your lineups for kind of a specific game plan. Whereas I've gone kind of the exact opposite way and gone hyper simple, because for me, the volatility of baseball kind of takes care of everything. I don't play bigger stakes. I mean, so for me, it makes more sense to kind of pound cut lines and kind of drive lineups through that. But it leads to two very different styles. The concepts are the same. I guess the way we think about things is largely the same. The concepts that we've learned are mostly the same. It's just that you've taken it to a very detailed direction, whereas I've taken it to a very holistic direction. Just kind of funny. It's kind of funny to me how a player will evolve through his years.
I mean, yeah, like I've never had luck just blindly running an optimizer.
Mm-hmm.
But
which
also,
I get.
There's so many optimizers now. Like that means baseball lineups are all ending up very similar.
Yep.
And everybody talks about getting leverage in one way or another. Well, you manipulating or even just hand building these days automatically is going to make you different than what a large amount of the field's doing, especially the ones that are MMEing.
Correct. And that's where I've taken a lot of my game. And you don't have to get different in very many areas, one or two. You can build 80% of your lineups like everybody else and be different in 10 to 20%. And you've got leverage. It's just whether or not you're right that night. That's all. If you're right, great, you do well. If you're not right, well, I suck again. It's just like it is what it is.
Right. Like that's why, like when people see pitching on DK and they see a guy that's 30% and they think that's just super chalk. Like to me, that's not super chalk.
No.
Like Kikuchi goes off at 30%, right? Well, guess what? You've now eliminated 70% of the field, and now you're competing with 30%.
Correct. Where that makes a difference and where I think people get the concepts mixed up or conflated is probably a better word, is cash games. When you've got a guy who is 35% owned in a cash game, he is very important. He is super chalk because if he does go off, there's only room for 15% of you to get in the money without him. Whereas, and you can't afford to fade that when you're really only trying to turn $5 into $10. You can't take that risk. So people take too much risk in cash games, but they don't take enough risk in tournaments because it's like they get worried about fading. Oh, he's super critical. No, at 30%, he's not, because only 0.0001% of you are going to win that damn thing anyway. You didn't need that guy, even if he was 40%, 50% owned, if he failed. You want it to cut the field down. The more people fall by the wayside in giant chunks, the more pathways there are for the lesser in common or the lesser overlapped lineups to climb way up the leaderboard. And I mean, like if there's only 25 of you guys in a 10,000 person contest that have a similar lineup and a chalk starts failing right and left, which in baseball it does, then man, you should be even if you didn't make the money that night, you should be thrilled that you were on the right track. And then because when you do make the money in one of those nights, you'll have a stupid score of 210 or something like that, but you'll find yourself in like third place. And you're like, what the hell? How'd that happen? Well, it's because it took out chunks of 2,000, 4,000 people along the way, and it whittled it down to where only the 25 of you that were thinking along these lines actually have a shot. But you're only fighting with those guys as opposed to 4,000 people. You're only fighting with the 25 left that think like you do. That's a very, very powerful tournament concept.
Right.
Man, in all this time, while you've been doing your thing, I've got, for the first time in a year, I've got all of my lineups, I think, in and ready to go. Now, again, that's the difference between me and you. You have to spend a lot of time on yours. I can come in and go pop, 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 and be done. But as a result, I'm not playing strategy contests, I'm playing the shotgun contests. I'm playing the MMEs. I'm playing the multipliers. I'm playing the nickel MME on FanDuel. Woohoo, big money. But I'm playing the multipliers, the boosters on DraftKings, where I only need to produce a top 2% lineup. I don't need to nut the slate. And as a result, I can take a more shotgun approach and say, here's my 5 or 6 favorite teams. Here's my, fine. Paul Skeens, 100%. Zach Wheeler. I think I'm 70% on him on DraftKings and 80% on Zach Wheeler. But I'm only making 31 lineups. So, and I'm only trying to get in the top 2%. I need these guys. If they're horses, they need to be horses. And they've got, obviously, a high percentage chance, higher than, I don't know, Sonny Gray right now as being in that lineup. So I can go overweight on him massively and just, try and turn. I'm not trying to make turn $1 into $1,000 or $1 into $10,000. I'm really just trying to turn, $1 into $20.
Right.
And it's a different approach. That's the beauty of these games is we can all play them all. We can talk them all. You can experiment around, try all of the different ones that you want, settle in on the way you like to play these games, find your coach, if it's Razzle or if it's me or if it's Scott or if it's, some of the other guys, when they start popping in and coming over, by all means, latch onto your guy, trust your guy, listen to the others, but you may only listen to 10% of what I have to say, or you may only listen to 20% of what Razzle has to say, because your other 50, 60% of what you're taking in is this one guy that you really identify with. That's what we're about. That's what you're supposed to do here is find that coach you trust, sink your, hitch your wagon to his train. And, don't try to listen to equal parts of what everybody says. You're just going to confuse yourself.
Right. James, that part that you saw was just 100% Philly on 49 lineups. I broke down my entire 350 lineups that I'm running on the DS across the 12 teams I was running as main. And I just ran each team as its own. On my sheet, I like teams at the bottom. Those are my main 12 teams. I only get exposure to the other teams based on the small stack side. Kind of the way I decided to play, just because I truly believe that on a given slate, not every team has enough offensive firepower to support a 5-man stack, but I do believe that they all have the ability to support a 2-man mini stack. So, trying to build my. I have some hand builds to go in the 555, the 121, and the $75 on DraftKings yet, and I can't decide how. Like the $75 and the 121 single entry, smaller fields. The 555 is only an 800-person field, so it probably doesn't need to be super different. But I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna differentiate those 3 lineups, because I'm not putting the same one in all 3 contests.
Tell you what, it's a good time for people to start asking questions. If you've got any, or if there's some specific thing you want to know, I'll tell you what. God, where were we talking about right before we hit live? God, we were talking about something. It really turned into. It was a good concept that you shared why you did something, and my squirrel brain is probably off chasing nuts right now.
I mean, we talked about why I'm, doing each team as a run on its own. To not only
you might want to tell them why you're building so many lineups, what the bases you're trying to cover. That's not a bad way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a big MME person, so like I want to cover as many bases as I can. I'm trying to hit the one lineup, right? Like everybody dreams about having a night where they take 7 of the top 10 spots in a GPP. I've had that night I had it in KBO. It wasn't even in MLB. It was KBO. And it's a great feeling.
COVID baseball.
Right. It's a great feeling, but it's unrealistic. So my goal is, 350. On this main slate, I think I have 370 to 375 lineups total because I hand built a bunch. I'm just trying to find one that gets home. Like I can survive if one gets home and the rest of them don't cash. Like I'm completely fine with that. I mean, it's frustrating to look at when you look at your contest, but you're winning. And that's what matters most, especially with how top heavy things have gotten. I'm just giving myself more access to the right combination, which kind of leads into why I decided to break them down and run each team on their own as this main stack one, because I'm making sure that team, right? So when I ran Philadelphia here, I made sure they're stacked at least once with every other team on the slate. But then that also does is it applies my pitching numbers to all Philadelphia stacks as well. So now I have Philadelphia and I have them paired with each of my pitcher too. Like if I were to run 300 lineups with my 12 teams all in once, it's not a guarantee that my Philadelphia main stack is going to have even 20% Paul Skeens, right? Philadelphia is a more expensive stack. It might then just force in Kikuchi and Alcantara or Crochet or somebody a little cheaper or Hunter Green. So like my Philadelphia runs in that full 300 might be missing the pitchers at the top that have the highest ceiling. So I'm just enforcing, making sure that I get exposure to all the combinations that I can.
And if you could run, how many lineups would you run?
I mean, if this allowed us to go higher, like I would do 600. But, doing 300 at a time, it still works, right? Like you can max the nickel and quarter on FanDuel. You can max both mini maxes on DK. There's a 50-cent and a $1 one. So you can run them together as 300 and do it that way. I just decided to break it out. And you didn't get to see because I forgot that this locks on whatever screen it was or whatever page it was. Because on that same monitor, I was randomizing my 350 lineups that I put into a CSV from each run on here. I live with whatever contest that lineup ends up in.
Right. And sometimes that helps and sometimes
completely fine with that because I'm not going to sort through 350 lineups and pick which one I think is the best for the $27 or the, for the $15 or whatever. Like
even
I'm not
if you did, even if you did, you're going to guess wrong so much.
And I don't believe in projections, right? Like you're going to hear me talk about that throughout the MLB season. I hate projection numbers for MLB. They're just a necessity to do what we're doing. But I just hate relying on numbers. So I'm not going to go down here and just take the highest projected build and stick it in my highest dollar contest. That's not how I, want to do it. So I live with what happened. So I randomized them all and then I copied and pasted them into my DK CSV and uploaded them and they're in now.
Yeah. But one thing people need to understand about that is because baseball is the scoring, a home run is much more important than a single. Whereas, in NBA, a 3-pointer isn't that much more important than a rebound. Because of that, your wide range of point scoring for a 9-hole hitter or the cleanup hitter is from 0 to 50 points. So if his projection's a 14 or an 18 or a 22, who the F cares? It's not that. I mean, it looks like a big deal. It certainly influences the optimizer and who he's going to love that day, but it doesn't mean much to your life. The statistical probabilities of that player being better, Aaron Judge at 18 being better than Shohei Ohtani at 17.5 is negligible. So you can look at your ownerships at that point and you can get leverage and make determinations that way. So your lineup projection of 118 points versus the 50th lineup you run at 102 points is still crap, because either lineup can just blow the roof off the thing. And that's really all you're saying, is by randomizing all of that, they're all going into different contests. There's no real way to determine which lineup is actually stronger today. You'd have to run this slate a jillion times for them to start sorting themselves out. And even then, I mean, it's just so weird. Baseball is just so wide open that's why you'll hear Razzle or me or anybody else say projections are not the end all be all at all. So,
yeah.
In case that helps people kind of connect the dots a little bit.
I'm gonna jump on a couple questions. I don't really like Framber Valdez. Like, he didn't make him cool. He just allows a few too many base runners for me, and I actually think the Mets are dangerous against left-handed pitching. So that's a reason. You know, on a day of aces, like, I'm just looking for that small reason to eliminate a pitcher, because I'm not playing all 16 of them or 18 of them on the slate, I guess. I cut it in half, or just over half. I have 8 guys in my pitcher pool. I had 9 originally, and I eliminated Evalde as the morning went on. I like Wheeler quite a bit. Wheeler should probably carry more ownership than 15%, to be honest.
DS liked him on DraftKings.
Yeah,
like pairing him with Skeens, it loved that combo.
I have my number. I think I wrote them in the cheat sheet, but
I went with it. I was just like, that's fine with me.
I got to find my sheet here with my actual notes. But Wheeler is the most likely starting pitcher on the slate to actually earn the W. He's plus 110 on DraftKings to get the win. And shockingly, number 2 is Kikuchi at plus 125. And Kikuchi's cheap. So there's just a lot of things that line up. Wheeler's K-prop is lower at, it's 6.5, but it's juice on the under. But he's projected to, I guess his outs prop is the highest on the slate. It's over 17.5, like strongly over it. So he's just expected to have, the best baseline start. Does that mean he has huge ceiling? Maybe not. We don't really know, but he arguably should be the safest. The reason why he's safer than Skeens is Skeens could end up throwing just 5 innings, right?
Right.
Wheeler's been there and done that. He's thrown 100 pitches. Like, he's probably a 6-inning guy in his first start, maybe even 7. Skeens, I think his ceiling is 6 innings and most likely 5. Those potential 2 innings are worth enough points to where I think Wheeler should be higher owned. So I wouldn't be shocked if he comes in more at the 25% range once things kick off. So I do think our number is low on him. I think our number is low for sale, but
sorry, but one thing I thought when I looked at the numbers, Skeens was so high and he's chalky, and Kikuchi made the most sense as a really cheap option. In terms of if you want to not go double high on your pitching or whatever else, you kind of want that. And I kind of thought that's what I would see when I ran Domination Station with a bunch of stacks and whatever else. And I thought, man, I'm going to see a lot of Skeens and Kikuchi. And again, that's fine if that's where it wants to go. But you know what? Because KC is so highly owned right now, or highly projected based on hitting environment and whatever else, and probably not facing a Skeens quality ace, then, damn. Because they're probably cheaper than some others, I think that's why I got more Wheeler. I think it came up a couple K in salary to Wheeler in the DS because it was choosing LA and KC and some cheaper stacks. Do you think that could be the case?
Yeah, I think so. That's I guess I haven't refreshed some of the projections here since I started my numbers, 2 hours ago. So it may have not completely adjusted for the change in starting pitcher for Cleveland. But so you're talking about a different pitcher. R. Fletch asked about a different pitcher. Like Alcantara to me at under 2% owned is criminal. The reason being is he threw a bullpen or simulated game last Friday to get to the 80 to 90 pitch range. You don't have a guy do that the week before the season starts and then hold him back and only have him throw 70 pitches in his return from Tommy John. Like, he's going to be out there. Early in the spring, they thought he could be limited all year until the trade deadline. He came out and said, and I believe the team didn't refute it, that there's going to be no limitations on him. So you're talking about a guy who's got great stuff, was touching 100 in spring already in his return, has a Cy Young against a Pitt offense that's super weak overall. For under 2% at 7,700, he's the guy that I think you need to go way overweight on. Obviously, I'm, over 6x the field at minimum.
I was going to say, it doesn't take much to get way over on him either because he's 2%.
Right. So he's a pivot off of Kikuchi, even though I love Kikuchi. Kikuchi's 31%. You pay 800 more and take Alcantara.
Who's got the upside?
Yeah.
Who's the better pitcher? I mean,
right.
Kikuchi's fine, but dude, I don't think Kikuchi's won a Cy Young, has he?
Nope.
So I mean, there you go.
As far as can the lineup score against Alcantara, maybe not. Alcantara's run prop is actually over on 1.5 runs allowed, so he might allow 2 runs. But if he only throws 5 innings, Skeens goes 6, that Miami bullpen is pretty weak. So I mean, there's a chance that they score against the bullpen too right after Alcantara comes out, and with Pitt being the visitor, that would benefit Skeens, right? Because then Skeens wouldn't have to pitch the next inning to still be eligible for the win. Like they can take the lead against the bullpen in the top of the 6th inning, and then he technically doesn't have to pitch the bottom of the 6th because he completed the 5th.
Right. What's the over-under on that game?
That game's the
sports betting fans. That ought to skew to the under, don't you think? I mean, if that thing's like a 7.5, you might take the under in that thing.
That one was 6.5.
Okay,
Just slightly on the over, but that's the lowest total on the slate.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to make sure because you had 2 relatively anemic offenses, 2 top-of-the-line pitchers. I mean, that screams under if I ever heard it, but they've adjusted the line, of course.
And Ricardo, I don't use randomization. I mean, I have a number in randomization, but that's my OCD. 21 is my lucky number. But I don't need it because I'm limiting my pitching pool so much. Like I'm putting ownership ranges on the pitchers to get numbers I want. That randomization isn't going to help me at all or do anything for what I'm doing. Like pitcher randomization works if you're not touching the pitching pool at all.
Right. That's when I don't know if Skeens should be that highly owned. Let me put 10% or 20% randomization on these guys and see what that and that's going to vary from run to run to run because it randomizes every single time.
Right.
You'll get Alcantara at 80% one time and then get Sonny Gray at 60% another time. You have no idea where you're going. That's for people. Now, I don't know. You could argue that that's a viable thing. I like it when it breaks up ties so I don't get 60% Tyler O'Neill, instead of somebody projected close to him. Points per dollar wise, 10% randomization shuffles them up, and instead of 60% O'Neill, I get 30% O'Neill and 30% of somebody else. It's a risk mitigation tactic, kind of like rolling the dice. I'm not that way anymore. I'm not afraid to go all in on people anymore, and it just is what it is. The way I look at it, when I MME and when I play my contests, first thing I want to do is I want to drive everything through cut line. And then after that, I don't want to have 100 lineups, 10 bad, 10 sort of bad, 10 okay, 10 good, and 10 great. I want to have 100 great. And the only way I can do that is to allow myself to overlap. Now, it comes down to risk aversion and your own personality. And I've made a shift myself where before I used to be really risk averse. Nowadays, I'm really not. And so when I saw 70-something% Skeens and 80-something% Wheeler, I said, let's go. Because I know that for the contest that I'm trying to attack, if those guys have a bad day, I'm screwed. Great. It doesn't do me any good in the contest I'm in to try and get a little bit of money back or whatever, because the top end of my prize pool isn't that high anyway. I'm just trying to get as much through as I can. And for that to happen, I have to be overweight on stuff and I have to be right. If I'm not right, I'm screwed. That's fine. Tomorrow's another day. If I am right, I want to be a lot right, not just a little bit right because I spent all my time spreading everything out.
Right.
Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can get too spread out.
Yep. It caps your ceiling. It helps your floor because at least something's going to do something, but it caps your ceiling because now a lot can't do a lot.
And that's definitely kind of what happened. Earlier this week, I showed my 2023 compared to 2024 overall numbers. And my cash rate in the money rate was the exact same at 23% between the years.
There you go. Then it just becomes how much variance do you want to take if the results are the same?
One year, I
want the roller coaster to be.
One year I profited 80K. The next year I lost 10K. Same in the money percentage, 90K difference. And what it was is we looked and, Roto Tracker shows you your average score and then your average caching score. My average score on lineups was 25 points lower in the loss year. My average caching score was 31 points lower. So my lineups were just not that good.
Right. I thought it would have been because you popped a few more deep runs.
But that's the thing is I won 5 GPPs in both years.
Okay.
It's just that first year I took second 6 times as well. So I just had more higher scores, but I just had better builds. I was giving myself a better shot. The second year, none of my builds just had any shot at all.
That goes to the get good at getting close concept that I like to talk about with beginners so much is your first priority, if you're new or if you're struggling or whatever, should be to get rid of the biggest leaks in your game. Are you really honestly doing stupid shit? If that answer is yes, and we discover some of the things that are really holding you back, just eliminating those, your whole game comes up, and it comes up quick. Now you're going to get to a point like you're talking about, Razzle, where the fine tuning and stuff makes pretty big differences because you've eliminated all that crap down there. Now you're dealing with this stuff and small shifts. Now you're just trying to get as close as you can, as frequently as you can, and giving yourself winning chances as often as you can. And from there, if you're going to pop 5 this year, and it's really how the rest do,
Yeah, it's unfortunately the way that it goes.
And that's just going to vary from year to year. You'd like to think that every year they're the same. And again, if you can run more volume, 600 lineups, because you've proven you're a winning player. And if you're a winning player and nothing fundamentally changed, and you should still be a winning player this year and next year and the next year, whatever, then your job is to run as much of your system as you can at as high a volume, and not dollars wise, but as high a volume as you can for what you're trying to do. Because what that's going to end up doing is compounding the winning. And it's going to, that volume smooths out the variance, flattens it out a little bit. If you, on the other hand, have never won a season yet, and you haven't been profitable yet, more volume is going to compound the losing too. So it's a double-edged sword. For Razzle's end, it's like, how many lineups can I jam through? And for a beginner, 18-year-old guy who just turned 18 this year, it's more like, what do I need to do to fix the things as fast as I can so that I can then get to where Razzle is? That's what obviously Razzle's here to help you do too all year long, when he's not in a bad mood.
Which is Pretty rare, just because, pretty rare that I'm in a bad mood because I don't live sweat things out, right? Like I do get mad at people because they live sweat every at bat, every pitch from the first inning on. Like all that comes with that is just negative, and I just don't see the reason to put yourself through that. So like I'll get mad about getting unlucky, but like I'll shake it 30 seconds later.
That's all you can do.
Yeah, I mean, really, at the end of it is you did everything you could leading up to the start of those games. It's out of your control from there. You take what happens, you learn from it or whatever, you make adjustments. And I'm not talking about scrapping what you did one day the very next day. Like you give yourself time, but you make small adjustments. And
professional sports teams don't go into rebuilds every single year just because they screwed up. They tweak.
Right. They're just small things. Everybody wants to make big changes because they think that's what's going to make things different. Really, it's just the small things.
And for some people that have big changes to make, yeah, it makes a big change. Like if you're stacking a 5-stack on DraftKings against your starting pitcher, yeah, knock that off. It's not going to help you. That'll make a big change. But yeah, generally speaking, once you've got the basics down, and these days, I mean, honestly, I don't want to say good old days, but the projections and the computer algorithms and the simulations and all that stuff that has evolved through the past 10 years or more has made things a lot more consolidated and a lot easier to hit the ground running quickly. But there's still a lot of in between the ears that has to go on, not only managing your bankroll and managing contest selection, all that, but also just the little tweaks like, you're talking about with getting different combinations of different players in every different lineup. And then how does that affect my pitchers? And I still want this much schemes. And if I do too much of this, it won't get a lower scheme. You're just always babysitting and massaging the DS and back and forth until you get what you like. And then dump it out there, click the button and let her eat.
Right. I mean, that's all it is. Do I late swap? Yes, if I need to. A lot of times, like I'm not perfect, but a lot of times I'll have a pretty accurate idea of what a lineup's going to be if we don't have it yet. So it's very rare that I have to make changes. Otherwise, I global swap within DK. Or I just search for, lineups with that player in and I hand change them. I've gotten pretty used to it where like I can hand change out a guy out of 40 lineups in 7 or 8 minutes. And it comes with being used to what the salaries are for other guys, from doing the research leading up to it, or just knowing who you're going to switch to. Like it's just real quick. But that comes with practice. I have not used the DS late swap thing. It would take me longer to do that than it does for me to just do my swapping the way that I do it. And I wish DK did what FanDuel does. Like it allows you to go pay above your guy in lineups that has enough money available. DraftKings doesn't even show that guy as an option, even if you do have money available.
That's crap.
When you're using the global swap.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little more annoying.
Wow. Get rid of that spam bot. I didn't realize we had the control to ban users or ban whatever, put them in timeout.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't do a lot of live streaming and stuff. I mean, and I know this is crickets for a lot of people because we're just not going through a lot because there's really not a ton to do that we don't do in Discord already. There's not any players that have come out other than, Bybee or whatever, scratched late, all that stuff. But I mean, that's why you guys really drive the show. If you got questions, pound them away, and I'll just keep that MLB bot out of there because that was ridiculous. I don't know. Hopefully people saw that there is a cash game video that does work. You've got, Scott's copy paste system that has proven to work. You've got Razzle's in that pinned chat as well that is very detailed. If you go through those 2 or 3 posts that lay all that out, I would encourage anybody to read through those. And then that sometimes those things bring up more questions than they answer. And so start asking those questions. That's how you learn. And it's not about what button do I push and what button do I, set this at. It's about why. It's about why am I trying to go overweight on a guy, or why am I trying to, take leverage? What's the overall benefit, pros and cons of that? And that's what the Discord channels are for. And it's what we do, pretty much 24/7 when the rooms are active, is answer all those questions too for people. And that's kind of what sets DFS Army apart. I know a lot of you guys already know that, but again, I'm talking to the 5 or 6 people in the viewership that might not be members yet, or something that just kind of stumbled across us. That's the big separator from DFS Army to any other site out there, is how active the coaches are and how much they care to make you a better player. If you had 3 teams, if you had 3 favorite stacks, are you willing to divulge those?
I mean,
they're probably on your cheat sheet.
They're on the cheat sheet. My top 3 are Philadelphia, Cincinnati, and Boston, technically. My cheat sheet is basically tiers based, right? Like, I have the 4-star tier, a 3-star tier, and then a 2-star tier. So like for today, there's 2 teams in the 4-star, 4 teams in the 3-star, and then 6 teams in the 2-star. So tiers is basically how I decide on percentages too, right? Like, I just layer them throughout. I take the 100% and I figure out a way to make each tier match itself and still add up to 100%. Some days it's tougher because, like, I don't have a ton of confidence in some offenses, and there's only 2 teams in each of the first 2 tiers, and then there's 8 teams in the lower tier. But it's the same thinking. I want to have more exposure to the teams that I think are in the best spots. Similar to what Scott does and how he, layers the percentages down. It's just I get to my rankings in a different way than Scott does.
Right. I think it's pretty funny that everybody does the same thing. They just go a little bit different way. Answer Ken's question of getting a lot of San Francisco and Cleveland on his small stack side. Would you trust that or adjust it? Ooh, that is a good segment. That's a good title for a segment. Trust it or adjust it.
I would adjust it because I'm making sure I'm getting exposure to everybody over there. So like I always cap it. So if I would have ran all my lineups at once, I would have capped that 2-stack side at 20% for any one team. And even then I generally end up lowering it to 14, 15%. Just kind of depends on how I feel, the way that things are running out. But
for those that don't know, what that does is it's going to have a team that it really, really loves. And if you left them all at 100%, that second side would be all in on Kansas City or something like that. What he's doing is saying, okay, stop at 15%, go find somebody else. And the reason he's doing that is to get not just 2 teams or 3 teams, but to get 5 or 6 or 7 teams kind of spread out through all of the different combinations, because it can't take them anymore. I do that. I just set it at a higher number. I get up to like 40%. I'm not building as many lineups as you are. So I can take a little bit more of a stand on teams, but very, very similar. That second side, I just keep it to about 5 different teams, set it at about 20% to 30% each, sometimes 40%, and just let it go.
Yeah.
Do your thing. I'm not trying to control it super, super tight. There's that bot again. Oh, get out of here.
What's a question from Jesse S here?
It's a good one.
What are a few key things I should be looking for in building a lineup in each position? Like how you stack in football DFS, you're going to stack. there's a little less correlation to worry about in baseball. Obviously, you want guys that are close to each other in the lineup. So you do want to correlate a little bit that way. But the goal is to just have, I don't know if you're on FanDuel or DraftKings. FanDuel, you can stack 4 guys, DraftKings 5 max. But you're just trying to fully stack an offense in hopes that they're the ones that team goes off, and you have a chance to hit, multiple points on each swing of the bat, really. You got the guy that singles to drive in a run. Then you have the guy that comes up and hits a 2-run homer to drive in the guy that singled, etc. And it rolls right down the line. And you just rack up points, similar to the quarterback wide receiver stacking, quarterbacks throwing the ball a ton of times. Well, you're going to pick up points because you're wide receivers. Same thing.
To add to that, a lot of that brings those guys up again a 5th time, a 6th time, maybe even a 7th time, which gets you more and more and more opportunity to score more and more points. And the more that offense of the night tends to keep scoring, then they get into the bullpen, and they get into the bad side of the bullpen, not the good side of the bullpen, which tends to perpetuate itself some nights. And that's why correlation is so big in baseball, and stacking as many people as you can on go big. Now, today's not the day, and maybe you'll talk about that, Razzle, too, because I don't think we did that on the air. But generally speaking, the bigger, 4 stacks and 5 stacks, the bigger. People don't stack hard enough. The bigger the stack, when you really hit that offense well, it really, really, really benefits you. But not today, right?
Yeah, I mean, today, I think because it's ace versus ace, like, I think there's a chance that you see a 3-man main stack win GPPs. I didn't build any. Maybe I built a couple hand builds last night. I didn't go to bed, so I don't remember what I did, at 2 o'clock this morning. I mean, I know I didn't build a lineup with all one-offs. I can guarantee that. But there's a reason why on here I have a bunch of 4-2 builds when traditionally, middle of the season, I'm basically running 5-2 every single day for DraftKings. I'm going 4-2 just based on some research that I've done over the last few years on opening day, ace versus ace. Like, I think you can get away with smaller stacks, just based on the number of hitters that score double-digit fantasy points on opening day. Numbers are pretty low in comparison to, middle of the season when weather's warm, etc.
Yep, I like that idea. I mean, the odds of a team scoring 8 or 10 or 12 runs today are a little bit lower than usual because they're aces. So based on that, it makes sense that you don't need 5 or 6 hitters from one lineup or 4 or 5 hitters from one lineup. You might be able to get by on 3 or 4 or something like that. And you still got to hit the right offense. But if everybody's scoring 3 or 4 runs and nobody's really scoring 10 runs, then you're going to want the key bats out of all of the different offenses. The guys that hit the home runs, basically, is who you're going to want.
I mean, and also the reason why 5-2 can still work in this scenario is it gives you slightly more margin for error. So say you're on the right team and you went 4-2. You have a chance to miss out on one of the guys that goes double digits. Where you're going 5-2, that gives you one more exposure. It gets you an extra 11% exposure to that team. So you have 11% more chance of getting that bat right. So even if one of your 5 duds, at 2-4 points or whatever, you still get that other guy where you might not have had that guy in that lineup in the 4-2. And that's something that I noticed in this back testing on opening day on why 5-2 still performed pretty well is because of that. Like there is some mistake catching there, where you would have missed out on those points. But if it all comes down to it and you nail your 4-2 combination or 4-3, because let's be real, when we run the 4-2, some of those lineups are going to end up 4-3. Mm-hmm. The DS just wants to make sure it meets the 4-2 criteria, and then it might sneak in a third guy. Some of them might end up 5-2. We don't really know. but it's going to at least meet this 4-2. But so then on some of those 4-3, you could absolutely nut the slate, because in my research, there's been a bunch of teams that'll have 4 guys do it, and then a few teams on a slate that 3 guys get there. Next thing you know, you have a 7-man group where everybody scored 14 plus fantasy points, and you just absolutely nail it. But that's less likely, because nobody's on large regular slates. Nobody's hitting the absolute nut lineup. It's the reason why FanDuel years ago ran that promotion where they were going to give away $1 billion if somebody entered the nut lineup into a contest. And obviously nobody did it, because it's mathematically, with this many combinations, it's really tough to do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why the 5-2 is still there. Gives you wiggle room. I mean, that's why like 3-2 and 3-3 would be the toughest, right? Like you have to nail it perfectly then, because then you also, on a 3-2, you're nailing 3 one-offs as well. And you need to have those 3 one-offs go double-digit fantasy points. And that's just in general why we do stacking, is because it gives us a chance more than being perfect, right? Like if you could nail everything perfectly, then yes, 8 one-offs might win every single slate if you could nail that.
Oh, yeah.
But I will also argue, if you can nail that, you should be betting those player props, because you're going to win more money.
Yeah. If you watch like the nickel or whatever, people will oftentimes say, well, how come you guys say stack, 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 and unstacked lineups win these contests? Well, because if you nail 9 one-offs, I can't beat you with a stack. It's not going to happen very often. Problem is, it's so hard to hit 9 one-offs that stacking gives you that margin for error, because you capture more of the points out of that lineup if you've got multiple players from within it. But I mean, so like if you're winning those medium size, like a 5,000 person contest, I don't think you'll very often see 9 one-offs win that like you might the 100,000 person contests.
Right.
I guess we can probably call it. Yeah. It looks like we're right against lock.
Yeah, FanDuel lock just started. DraftKings is still an hour away, but.
Oh, well, we can stick around. I don't care what we do. I got to leave in an hour and a half to go get a kid from work. But other than that, you're looking at it.
I mean, at some point I have to start college basketball notes, but
we can cut it down.
Notes, lineup construction, and then I am doing notes for tonight's after hours DraftKings slate as well, baseball. So, but, yeah, just 2-gamer notes don't really get too in depth. I mean, you're generally going to probably play everybody if you're building multiple lineups, but there's enough money.
Scoring gets so tight in those sometimes, because if the top of the lineups go off, everybody's got them, and so it's just that one little dude somewhere else that makes the difference, and it was 2 points worth of a difference. And
I mean,
chops and everything else.
You can't miss out on a home run on a 2-game slate.
No.
Can't miss out on the guy that gets 3 hits or steals 2 bases.
No, you cannot.
I mean, we can hang out for a few more minutes just to see if any more questions show up. And then whenever we're done, I'm going to walk away from my computer for 10 minutes or so and reset a little bit, probably turn on the first game and figure out if I'm going to have a visitor tonight or not.
Nice. Guess it depends on what kind of visitor.
She's been here before. I just don't. I don't know. Maybe we'll push it off to next week since I didn't go to bed last night. Just too much to do.
Yeah, I have no comment along those lines.
It's just not as easy to do at 43. as it was
Good Lord, get the
even
50.
5 years ago.
Get the 50.
At this rate, I don't know if we make it to 50. Jesus.
It's just to give a shit. It's like, all right, maybe not. I don't know. It's funny. Sometimes you care, sometimes you don't. Whereas when I was 18 or 20, I couldn't go 3 hours without being like, where it at? Where it at? Now I'm kind of like, I don't know. Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah. It's kind of what it feels like. I mean,
which is so sad because I so badly want to be 18 or 20 again. Just don't care.
I want the energy, that's for sure.
Just don't care. I mean, that's one thing I would not go through again is little young kids. Now that we're finally on the other side of it and the kids are kind of in their 20s and mostly out of the house and stuff like that, geez Louise, life gets good again. I mean, and not, because not in that way, because I already discussed, we don't have the energy for that shit, but just the freedom of being able to just sit around, go do what you want, when you want, how you want, like, whatever. That is worth working for. And then you look at your neighbors next door or whatever, and they've got little 4-year-olds running around their yard, and you're like, God, I remember those days. Would not go back.
I mean, I'm happy my daughter's 9 now because, like,
Yeah, it gets
I feel
better.
like I can take her to the things that I want to do,
Right.
where we meet up with friends or whatever. Like at 5, 6, like it was a lot more difficult.
Yep.
So like things are better in that regard. But yeah, like if something doesn't happen tonight, then it's not going to be till next week because then I have my daughter all weekend. And
I got you.
schedules when you get
older.
older like are more difficult to work around. When you're in your 20s.
Yeah. Wait till she gets into high school and starts other like big time activities and stuff. And if you want to participate in those or go watch or whatever, the next thing you know, you're busy as shit again. You think, when's this stuff going to calm down? They go to college. Next thing you know, now don't see them but once a week, but you're driving a freaking 3-hour weekend to go down there and back. I mean, it all gets like that, but the in between, the downtimes are nice.
Yeah.
Downtime is real nice. How the hell do I have a Boston stack without Tyler O'Neill in it?
Wait, what?
I've got a Boston stack without Tyler O'Neill in it.
Because Tyler O'Neill's not on Boston anymore.
That would explain it. Where is he?
He's on Baltimore.
Okay. Like I said, I don't follow the offseason much. It's going to take me a week or two to remember to know where everybody is and whatnot. I know he's got that home run streak on opening day that's kind of interesting. I wonder what the home run prop is on that. People that are going to chase it off. Was he 4 or 5 in a row working?
5, I think, but I didn't look into it to see if most of those came against left-handed pitching or not.
I'd have too much pride as a pitcher to throw him a meatball and let him continue the streak just for the whatever. I'd obviously try and strike him out, but it'd be neat to see him hit another one and then watch the buzz for every year that he doesn't hit one. Be like, what do we do with this guy?
That game hasn't even started yet. They must be doing pregame
opening day bullshit.
Yeah, because the Yankee game's already through the top half of the inning.
Oh, is it really? Wow.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I haven't gotten my T-Mobile MLB stuff going.
Yeah, you're probably gonna want to do that.
I don't know if they're offering it again this year or not. I haven't seen anything.
They are. I don't know if it ended or if you still have today to do it yet, but
I think
it's out there.
I need to go find it because definitely like taking advantage of that.
I mean, if I had the opportunity, I'd do it, but also like because of everything I do, me getting the package, like it's a tax write-off anyways.
Oh, absolutely.
So I mean, I guess it doesn't matter either way.
I write off Red Zone.
Yep. You get to write off so much stuff.
Yeah, being a 1099 employee, in my opinion, beats W-2 any day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, it just
nice little advantages.
It also then just helps with winnings offset for
Mm-hmm.
the sites as well. So, like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
super important. Because then I technically can write off some meals where all I have to do is talk about sports for 30 seconds.
Well, it also helps drive places.
Yeah.
Write off some of the trip and stuff. If you drive to XYZ city to go see a game, it's just have to meet somebody from the area that, talk to them a little bit about the website, what we do, how we do it, call it a recruiting trip.
Yeah.
It all passes. It's legit. That's not a lie.
Stop at a casino on the way and hit the
Yeah.
ATM just to withdraw some cash.
There you go.
Yeah, there are tricks to the entire thing.
Deductions are a good thing. People that don't like deductions don't get deductions.
They are very important in today's tax world.
Well, I guess we can call it if we're giving out tax advice, right?
Yeah, I don't really want to talk about taxes, even though I have to do mine in the next.
I still have to do mine too. I put it off every year. Hate it. Such a pain in the ass, but whatever. I usually try and do them around spring break when the kids are home because I got to do everybody's now. That's one downfall of older kids. You got to do their freaking taxes for them for a while until they figure it out themselves. But ugh, that sucks.
That's why I have a guy that specializes in DFS and crypto taxes. So
yeah,
pay him to do it.
That's a good thing. Yeah, I'm still doing my own shit, and it takes me all day on Saturday, and it pisses me off every year. And then I don't worry about it for 364 years, and it pisses me off again. And it's a never-ending cycle. Oh, I guess we should pull the old plug. Yeah, we're down from 60-something people watching to 20. So
yeah, we might as well call it.
Hey, well, thanks for doing this. Glad we got up and running. And if Mondays and Tuesdays work for you, if we want to do Mondays or we want to do Tuesdays, I mean, I'll be happy to jump on with you once a week or something if we've got something to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, for the time being, I'm going to be available. Like I'm not working full time, so I'd like to do some shows as much as possible.
I've got my hands in a ton of different shit right now, so it's hard to do something daily. But
right,
I can certainly, if you find somebody for a Wednesday or find somebody for a Thursday or for a couple of days or whatever, if you save a Monday or a Tuesday for me, I'd be happy to do whatever. So
yeah, we'll work on getting a rough schedule sometimes and go from there.
Sure, sounds like a plan.
All right.
Well, all right, everybody. Looks like that MLB bot got us again, so we're going to cut him off at the source and just end the stream.
Yep.
All right, cool. I'll see you. I'll see you later this evening then. All right.
All right, sounds good.
All right, yeah.